Hello everyone, it's NerdGasm. This is my Resident Evil Retrospective series, and we are moving on to the fourth mainline entry in the franchise, Resident Evil 4. Originally released in early 2005, Resident Evil 4 signified a lot of big changes for this series, for better and for worse, depending on who you ask. The idea with it was to reinvent the franchise, take its story and gameplay in an entirely new direction, and distance itself from its predecessors. Gone were the plot elements surrounding Umbrella and the zombie enemies established in past games. Same goes for the fixed camera and tank controls, in favor of a more dynamic approach, with an over-the-shoulder perspective while aiming. While Resident Evil 4 does provide some genuinely terrifying moments of survival horror, it leans far more heavily on its extravagant set pieces and fast-paced action, which is what the next few games in the series would try to emulate, and then increase to needless levels. I found myself really excited to play Resident Evil 4. I had heard amazing things about it. You get to play as Leon S. Kennedy once again, which is cool, and I was curious how he had evolved following the events of Resident Evil 2. I was interested in seeing where the fun gameplay I enjoyed so much in the remakes of RE2 and RE3 originated from, where it all began. Resident Evil 4 has been frequently listed as one of the greatest video games ever made. It not only revolutionized the Resident Evil series, but helped influence a lot of other third-person shooter and action games that would be released throughout the 2000s into today, so its impact on the video game industry as a whole is far-reaching. In terms of its gameplay and controls, Resident Evil 4 is one of the most satisfying to play out of all the RE games in my opinion. I will admit, it was a bit sluggish and awkward to get the hang of at first, but that's just because I had never played it before, and went into it immediately after playing through the more modern and polished remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3. Obviously, things were going to be different with this one. It is the older game. Adapting to the controls and overall feel of Resident Evil 4 was nowhere near as taxing as it was with Resident Evil 1 though, so I shouldn't really complain. When I first started playing Resident Evil 4, my strategy was more in line with what I had done in the previous two installments. I was playing at a slower, methodical pace, keeping my distance from my enemies and aiming for headshots when I could, but in this game that approach only takes you so far. Because Resident Evil 4 focuses a lot more on the action side of things, you need to learn to reprogram your mind a little bit, get comfortable running towards danger, getting up close and personal with your foes, hitting them with kicks, knife attacks, and even suplexes when they are stunned by well-aimed shots to the legs. Not only do these finishing moves deal damage, but they conserve ammo for the larger and more challenging boss encounters you will be faced with. The inventory system in the form of an attaché case has been expanded upon a great deal in Resident Evil 4, and this is another one of the more satisfying elements of the game for me. You have this grid that holds all of your weapons, ammo, and healing items, and each one takes up a certain amount of squares. By rotating the items and fitting them into the empty slots like a jigsaw puzzle, you can maximize your space, and you have a lot more of it than you initially realize. Ammo, healing items, and currency can be picked up, and you can purchase first aid sprays, additional weapons, weapon upgrades, inventory upgrades, and even sell items for extra cash by finding the mysterious merchant character throughout the game's many locations. His shop area is always lit with a blue flame. The various colored herbs you can find, green, red, and blue, a staple of the series, that can be combined and possess different levels of healing abilities return. However, in the place of blue herbs, which cure your player of poison, there are now yellow herbs instead, due to the lack of poisonous enemies found in Resident Evil 4. The yellow herbs increase Leon's maximum health, and must be combined with a green one or green and red one to have any effect. Speaking from my own personal experience, I found Resident Evil 4 to be the second hardest game in the franchise, under the remake of the original. It is pretty generous with its checkpoints, usually happening every time you enter a new room or location, or when a new enemy type is introduced, so it made the difficulty manageable, but even still, some areas gave me quite a bit of issue. They were challenging, and led to some trial and error to get past. The game makes use of QuickTime events, and sometimes I was not ready for them when they appeared, which led to a few cheap deaths. I know these QTE sequences were commonplace back then, and some people still enjoy them, but I myself am not one of them. They are annoying and completely unnecessary, most of the time at least. In Resident Evil 4, the game takes place within an unnamed village in a rural and mountainous area of Spain. Most of the enemies you encounter are hostile villagers who appear to be influenced by some mysterious higher power. They are still zombies, but not in the traditional sense. Their brains have been infected by ancient mind-controlling parasites called Las Plagas. These parasites increase the strength and durability of their hosts, and are able to communicate with each other within them. Unlike the zombies from past games, these Los Ganados, meaning the cattle or livestock in Spanish, are able to dodge your attacks and wield various weapons like axes, pitchforks, and even chainsaws, making them far more formidable. These Ganados are the foot soldiers of a larger neo-pagan religious group who worship the Plagas and their unique abilities, called Los Illuminados. They command a paramilitary made up of their mind-controlled worshippers, and much like Umbrella from the previous games, perform various experiments to create bioweapons with the intention of conquering the world. Some of these BOWs include the Del Lago, a giant plaga-infected salamander you battle on a boat in a lake, like something straight out of Moby Dick or Jaws. The creepy human insect and reptile hybrid called the U3 that you fight in this series of suspended shipping crate things. You need to unlock each segment by activating 2 switches in them, and then moving into the next within a time limit, so the creature falls into the endless abyss below. You've got the massive El Gigantes that just eat ammunition. Once you weaken them enough, you have to attack the plaga growth that sprouts out of their back. You fight these things multiple times in the game, sometimes individually and sometimes in pairs. The Verdugos are like humanoid scorpions, and they are really fast and stealthy. You need to slow them down with nitrogen to attack them. And then you have the fucking dogs. They make a return in this game, and I think they are the most annoying in Resident Evil 4. There's this maze sequence you have to get through, and they pop up all over the place throughout it. Because these ones are infected with plaga, they break apart when you damage them, and have tentacles that can attack you from a distance. Ugly bastards. But I think the most frightening enemy type in this game, possibly even the entire RE franchise, are the Regenerators, that are able to completely regenerate their bodies, even after direct headshots. Their pale complexions, sharp teeth, and chilling breathing sounds you hear when in their vicinity get under your skin. Though they are slow-moving and relatively easy to avoid, it's made more difficult by the very narrow and linear areas you usually encounter them in. In order to kill them, you need to get the infrared scope for the sniper rifle, so you can see their weak points. Though I adore the many gameplay elements found in Resident Evil 4, I am a lot more reserved when it comes to its story. I have very mixed feelings about it, which may come as a shock to some of you. The narrative in RE4 goes in a new direction, distancing itself from Umbrella, from the zombies and T-Virus, which is something I really admire about it. Its boldness, taking that kind of a risk after the success of the first 3 games. But I think tonally, it does get very inconsistent in areas, and a bit disengaging as a result, especially closer to the end. Following the Raccoon City incident in Resident Evil 2, Leon Kennedy would move on from the RPD and be recruited by the US government to act as one of their agents specializing in anti-BOW combat. 6 years later, he would be sent on a mission to Europe to rescue Ashley Graham, the daughter of the US president, who had been abducted and is being held prisoner by an evil cult, Los Illuminados, led by Osmond Sadler. Lord Sadler's plan is world domination. You learn that he had implanted Ashley with one of the Plaga parasites in the hopes that when she returned to US soil, the parasite would multiply, being asexual, and allow Los Illuminados to control the minds of high-ranking political figures. The United States would be the first country of many to fall in this way. The first hour or two of this game is simply incredible. Its pacing is immaculate, and some of the best in the entire Resident Evil franchise in my opinion. The village you find yourself in is very mysterious, and the odd behavior of the villagers inhabiting it leads you to ask a lot of questions as the player. I found myself unable to put it down because I was completely absorbed in everything that was happening. I wanted to keep playing it to figure out just what in the hell was going on with these people, why they were acting so abnormally. But about halfway through the game, I think the story loses some of its effectiveness around the time you reach the fortress of Los Illuminados, Salazar Castle. Now the castle itself, I don't really have a problem with. I like the visual design of it, with the death traps like swinging axes, the lowering ceiling and lava and everything. It's quite unique when compared to a lot of the other locations in the Resident Evil games. But the murkier atmosphere the game was going for at the beginning, that sense of the unknown, begins to dissipate rather rapidly. Instead of frightening me, I found the story venturing into the realms of campy action movie, and it became a bit too silly to take seriously. I like the main villain of the game, Osmond Sadler. He's fine. Same goes for the imposing Father Torres Mendez, the village chief. Sadler and all of his disciples have been injected with a genetically engineered dominant species of Plaga, which give them full control over their bodies. Unlike the Ganados, they can also mutate and transform at will, which is really cool and disgusting. But one of Sadler's disciples you encounter, Ramon Salazar, is a bit too bizarre, even for this game and series. He's a nobleman of very short stature. He has the height of a 10-year-old, but is really 20, and also has gray hair and a wrinkled face, that of an old man's. He hijacks your communications and taunts you as you make your way through his castle and its courtyard. Something about him just feels off. He sticks out like a sore thumb compared to every other character in the Resident Evil franchise, that I know of at least. At times, I didn't even feel like I was playing a Resident Evil game. It's as though he's a character from another game series that just took a wrong turn and ended up in this one. Salazar is one of my least favorite antagonists in this franchise without a doubt. Such an odd choice for this story. When you do reach the castle section, Resident Evil 4 starts jumping the shark. It feels like an episode of the 1960s Batman TV show, with Leon escaping one of Salazar's death traps with a grappling hook, and then jumping through lasers like he's in Mission Impossible or The Matrix or something. A lot of ridiculous visuals you wouldn't expect to see in a game like this, not a Resident Evil one, and again, it's hard to take a lot of it seriously, and it clashes with the tone of the early parts of the game, which are far superior in my opinion. When you are walking around those old-fashioned and antique buildings, uncovering the mystery behind this cult, the behavior of the villagers, sometimes in the rain with the only light coming from dimly lit torches, there was a very dark and creepy atmosphere to it all, a sense of dread and a lot of gravity to the situation. But when this game starts injecting a lot of the action set pieces, all the one-liners and cheesy dialogue, its tone gets very diluted, very muddled. Once you find the president's daughter, Ashley, I think the story and even gameplay takes a bit of a hit too. The dynamic between Leon and Ashley is somewhat interesting with their personalities, but she doesn't feel very competent, doesn't serve much of a purpose to you. This isn't like the next few Resident Evil games that gave you a co-op partner that helped you gun down all of the monsters. Here, Ashley is just a hindrance more than anything. During combat, you have to press R1 to get her to stay put so you can go forward and attack enemies without her taking damage. Her health drains very fast. The AI with her is not very bright, sometimes running into the blast radius of your thrown grenades or other hazards, and you have to share healing items with her too, which is really annoying. She can also be grabbed by enemies and carried away. If they manage to escape the area with her, you game over. In summary, she's a real pain in the ass, and you feel like you are playing a babysitter simulator at times, always having to keep track of where she is and prevent her from killing herself by mistake if she strays too far off. It's just not fun. What I find really stupid too is how she gets recaptured multiple times throughout the story anyways, again and again. It's like you're going in circles. So all of your effort in these combat sections trying to protect her, all of the healing items you use on her feel like such a waste. There are some sequences where you play as Ashley, and sometimes as Leon, you need to use the R1 button to make her stand in a particular spot to solve a puzzle or activate a switch, the early framework for the co-op that would be found in the next couple games, but here I find it to be really awkward. And speaking of awkward, there is this cringy moment at the end when Leon and Ashley escape the island, and Ashley asks Leon if he wants to put in some overtime with her after he takes her home. I know she's supposed to be like 20 or something, but the way she's depicted throughout this game, how she behaves and talks, she seems like an early teenager. The romance between the two characters feels extremely forced and out of place. I don't think the story or dialogue throughout the game reinforced it at all. It just comes off as really creepy, kinda gross. Also, the fact that sex is on Ashley's mind in that moment after everything they had just been through and witnessed troubles me. In Resident Evil 4, we see the return of Ada Wong. Last time we had seen her, she had seemingly fallen to her death at the end of RE2. Somehow, she survived the fall and the destruction of Raccoon City. I was hoping this game would have made some sort of reference to it, give some sort of explanation, but it didn't. I think it may have been revealed in one of the spin-off games that I never played, which is unfortunate, so I felt a bit lost with her here, didn't understand her whole deal. In Resident Evil 4, Ada pops up several times and helps Leon rescue Ashley. It's revealed that she has been working for Albert Wesker though, who now has a high-ranking position in one of Umbrella's rival companies. Ada's mission is to gather as much data on the Plagas as possible and to obtain a sample of the dominant species Plaga, alongside another operative dispatched by Wesker named Jack Krauser. Krauser is a freelance mercenary who used to serve alongside Leon in the US government's special forces and has now been hired to take him out. Krauser would infiltrate Los Illuminados, getting on the good side of Osmond Sadler, and was the one responsible for kidnapping Ashley in the first place. Once you beat the main story of RE4, you unlock a bonus side story called Separate Ways that has you play through the events of the game, but from the perspective of Ada Wong. It's a shortened version, a bit of a mini-game, but it does offer some more insight into why she was there, what she was doing, and her involvement with Albert Wesker. It also gives you more context behind some of the more peculiar moments in the game, playing as Leon, like when the church bell rang at the beginning, which caused the villagers to stop attacking you, or what had happened to Leon's awesome jacket, seeing that it had been taken by a Ganado when you returned to the starting village. I did enjoy playing Resident Evil 4. Its gameplay is really fun, but from a story perspective, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites in the franchise, despite all of the praise people give it. I wouldn't go so far as labeling it as overrated, because I understand how innovative and influential its gameplay was to the third-person shooter and action genres, but I do think Resident Evil 4 is one of the weaker entries in the series, based based solely on the strength and consistency of its narrative and atmosphere. Resident Evil games don't have to follow a strict formula. They can deviate from the traditional zombie stuff and incorporate some action movie elements if they want to, but I also think it's really important that they maintain their level of scares throughout, have that underlying frightening atmosphere, and with RE4, outside of those first few hours when you are left in the dark with what's happening, and of course the Regenerador sections closer to the end, I don't think it really does. It leans a bit too heavily on the action and camp in areas, becomes too silly to take seriously at times, at least to me. Now, there is going to be a remake of Resident Evil 4, which is set to release early next year. I am really excited for it because supposedly it's going to reimagine the original game's story with a tenser atmosphere, scarier character designs, and darker environments. I think it could easily be the superior version of the game and eliminate a lot of the issues I have with the original. Leon will probably be made more three-dimensional as well, not just a walking action hero cliche. I might do a review of it when it comes out, if you guys want me to, but depending on how much has changed in it, it might not be entirely necessary. You've heard my thoughts on the original version of Resident Evil 4, as well as the remakes of RE2 and RE3, so you could probably judge it for yourself and what my thoughts on it would be, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Once again, I want to thank you all for watching this review, and I hope you have been enjoying my Resident Evil retrospective series thus far. I know Resident Evil 4 is very popular, and some of the things I said about it in this video may have upset a lot of the diehards out there. I'm in the minority with a lot of these opinions, but realize I didn't grow up playing this game. I don't have any nostalgia towards it. These were my genuine thoughts after experiencing it for the very first time. If you'd like to support the channel and ensure the creation of future content like this, you can do so by subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, and by becoming a producer over on patreon.com/channel NerdGasm if you can. I will see you all in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and always stay nerdy.